So reflex pathways. Okay, there are 5 basic steps to all of them. Okay, and if you have down the 5 basic steps, then everything else, then all of them are pretty quick to memorize. Do you know what the very first thing is?
Receptor?
Yep, so you're going to have a receptor. Okay, then what? So where's it going to go from the receptor? Just follow the signal is basically what you're supposed to do.
The sensory neuron.
So sensory neuron or afferent pathway.
Oh.
It'll be used interchangeably, so you're correct. I was just,
Okay.
whatever you said, I was going to say the opposite of. Does that make sense? Because you're correct, I just want you to be familiar with both. Okay. Then there is, so in the spinal cord, then there is typically an interneuron. Okay. Okay, and then what would be next?
Efferent.
So an efferent pathway also, it would in most cases be an alpha motor neuron. Okay. And then very last would be the effector. Okay.
Did I get that wrong?
Switched. Is what switched? Sorry, which part of it? Are the receptors, is that what you're talking about? Sympathetic, betas. You're also going to have alpha. Oh, there's alphas. Alphas, betas, muscarinic.
That's terminal, that's
So this is going to be the pre-ganglionic neuron, post-ganglionic neuron. The cell bodies are going to be in collateral. Yeah. But that's, if you're in the sympathetic pathways, then that makes sense.
So that.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Okay. So, jumping back on track, you've got, what are the different pathways that you have learned? The different reflexes.
Stretch.
You got your stretch reflex.
PTO. Withdrawal. Reciprocal, innervation, crossed extensor.
Okay, so Golgi for GTO.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I know there's one less than what it says in your book, but withdraw with reciprocal. If you know withdraw with reciprocal innervation, you know the withdrawal. But yeah. Okay. So I'm going to cover the one that has the 2 exceptions, and then everybody else basically obeys the rules that I just set up here.
Okay.
There's only one with the exception, and that's the stretch reflex. Okay? So the stretch reflex, what is its receptor?
The sensory or receptor, stretch reflex. I don't know. Never mind. I don't know.
Think about it. What is it?
What was the question?
So the receptor for the stretch reflex,
It's the muscle spindle.
muscle spindle. Okay? Is everybody all right with that?
Oh, I thought the stretch was the muscle spindle reflex.
That's also the reception.
It's typically called the stretch reflex, and its receptor is the muscle spindle.
Okay.
Okay? So you've got your muscle spindle. Okay? And then it's going to send an afferent. It's going to go through an afferent pathway or a sensory neuron. It's going to go up. There is no interneuron on this one. So that is exception number 1. no interneuron. And then the second exception happens at the efferent pathway. So there, it goes down an efferent pathway or an alpha motor neuron, but there's also a gamma motor neuron, okay? I'm hitting the hardest one first because then all the other ones seem easy. So, gamma motor neuron as well.
So the receptors hit both alpha motor and gamma neurons at the same time?
Yeah.
Okay.
We only, like, sometimes they clarify it and they say it's only a one synapse system. But, yeah, because a lot of times they ignore gamma but want you to know it at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it all depends. So the gamma, so alpha, when you think of like the alpha dog or things like that, that's like the top dog, you know, it's the big one. So the alpha is going to be innervating the main muscle group, whereas the gamma goes and it innervates the muscle spindle itself, keeping it at a constant length. Okay, so it's been stretched, the gamma motor neurons are going to return it to its normal length, so it can be stretched again if it needs to be. Basically, they make it so that receptor can be used over and over again. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is one of the most confusing parts of it.
So gamma motor neurons basically just increase or they affect the sensitivity of the muscle spindle and
Kind
just
of.
in case the doesn't change length too much?
Yeah,
or-
so imagine it like a slinky, okay?
Mhm.
So when, like on the knee jerk reflex, this is the stretch reflex, when I smack right there, it's stretching those fibers, okay? So it would be like taking the slinky and stretching it. It's sending signals, okay? And so it's sending a signal to change, have the alpha motor neurons go and contract or change it so it's not being stretched so badly. But before that even happens, the gamma motor neurons will return it back to the normal length. So even if we, for example, if I kept the pressure there and I'm overriding the signal with my mind, the gamma motor neurons are returning it to the normal length. So if I hit it even harder, then I would still have a response. Basically, it just keeps it at the same length,
Mhm.
returns it back to the same length. That's going to be the gamma motor neurons.
And so the alpha motor neuron just does that, only it's bigger? I don't know. What are the differences between the two?
The alpha motor neuron is going to affect a large muscle group, where the gamma motor neuron is just going to be affecting the muscle spindle.
Oh, okay.
Because, for example, I can override the alpha motor neurons,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not going to override the gamma motor neurons.
Okay.
Basically, because if I somehow overrode it, then I would never get signals to my brain saying that they were being stretched.
Mm-hmm.